Walk down any grocery aisle and you will pass a wall of powders, bars, and shakes, all promising the same thing your body has quietly needed since birth: protein. But here is what almost nobody considers. Long before any of that existed, families grew their protein right in the backyard, and some of the richest sources on earth are plants most people today walk right past. Today we are counting down 20 protein-rich plants most folks never think to grow, and one near the end was once so valuable that whole villages guarded it through winter. Before we dig in, take a second to subscribe to the Homestead Gardener, because every week, Jack brings you old plant wisdom, useful crops, and practical natural living. Now let us get our hands dirty. Plant 1. Peas. The humble climber that fed families through lean springs. Most people think of peas as a sweet little side dish, something you shell on the porch and forget about, but your grandparents saw them differently. Peas were one of the first crops in the ground each spring, and one of the first fresh proteins available after a long winter of stored food. A single cup of fresh green peas carries a surprising amount of protein for something so light and sweet, more than you would ever guess from the taste. And here's the part gardeners love. Peas do not just feed you, they feed the soil. Their roots pull nitrogen out of the air and lock it into the ground, quietly enriching your garden for whatever you plant next. Old-timers understood this without a word for it. They simply knew the ground was better after peas. You can eat them fresh, dry them for winter soups, or let the vines climb a simple string trellis. If you have never grown a spring crop before, peas are about the most forgiving place to start. They tolerate cool weather, sprout fast, and reward you within weeks. One practical trick the old gardeners swore by was to plant a second, later row a few weeks after the first, stretching the harvest so the porch shelling never quite ran out. That is the quiet strength of this little climber. It gives more than it takes, and it always has. Plant 2. Green beans. The porch shelling staple that quietly outperforms its reputation. Green beans might be the most underestimated protein on this whole list. We think of them as filler, a plain vegetable that shows up beside the main dish. But dry those same beans and store them, and you have one of the most reliable protein foods a homestead ever kept. That is exactly what earlier generations did. They grew bush beans and pole beans, snapped some fresh for supper, and let the rest dry right on the vine for the pantry. A jar of dried beans could carry a family through the coldest months when nothing else was growing. Green beans are also one of the easiest crops to grow in almost any yard. Pole varieties climb a fence or a few tall stakes and produce for weeks, while bush types stay low and need no support at all. Pick them young and tender for the table, or let them mature and dry for storage protein. One practical tip worth remembering is to keep picking. The more you harvest fresh, the more the plant keeps producing. Leave them too long and the plant slows down. Grandmothers knew that rhythm by heart. Green beans reward the person who shows up regularly. And that steady, humble reliability is exactly why they earned a permanent place in the old kitchen garden. Plant 3. Chickpeas, the ancient garden bean that traveled across the whole world. You know chickpeas from hummus and roasted snacks, but you may not know they are one of the oldest cultivated foods on the planet. People were growing these little golden beans thousands of years ago, carrying them across deserts and mountains because they were dense, filling, and stored beautifully. That is real value. A food you could carry, plant anywhere, and count on. Chickpeas pack a serious amount of protein into a small package, along with the kind of slow, steady energy that kept working families going through long days. And they are far easier to grow at home than most folks assume. They like warm weather, well-drained soil, and full sun, and they actually prefer being left a little dry rather than pampered. Plant them, give them room, and let the pods fill out and dry on the plant before you harvest. From there, you can roast them for a crisp snack, simmer them into hearty stews, or grind them into a fine flour the way cooks have done for centuries across the old world. Here at the Homestead Gardener, we love crops with history you can taste. The chickpea is exactly that. It fed ancient travelers, it fed poor families, and it fed kings, all from the same modest plant. Grow a row this year, and you are planting something that has quietly sustained humanity longer than almost any food you can name. Plant 4. Lentils, the tiny seed that outlasted empires and famines. If there were ever a survival food built by nature, it would be the lentil. These small, flat seeds have fed people through famine, war, and hard winters for longer than written history can fully track. And the reason is simple. Lentils are packed with protein. They store almost forever when kept dry, and they cook fast without soaking, which mattered enormously when fuel was scarce. Your ancestors did not need a nutrition label to know a bowl of lentils kept a working body strong. Growing them is refreshingly low fuss. Lentils are a cool season crop that actually thrives in poorer soil. And like their legume cousins, they leave the ground richer than they found it by fixing nitrogen. Sow them early in spring, let the pods dry on the plant, and thresh out the little seeds for the pantry. One practical note worth mentioning is that lentils cook quickest when stored properly and used within a year or two. Since very old dried lentils can turn stubbornly hard no matter how long you simmer them, keep them cool, dark, and dry, and they will serve you faithfully. There is a reason lentils show up in the oldest recipes on earth. They are cheap, hearty, deeply nourishing, and almost impossible to ruin. The old way, once again, turns out to be the smart and steady way. Plant 5. Soybeans. The backyard bean that quietly became a protein powerhouse. Most people think soybeans belong on giant farms, not in a home garden, but that is a modern assumption worth throwing out. The green version, edamame, is one of the most protein-rich things you can grow in an ordinary backyard, and it happens to be a complete protein, carrying all the building blocks your body cannot make on its own. That is rare in the plant world, and it is exactly why this humble bean matters. Growing them is straightforward. Plant the seeds once the soil warms in late spring, give them full sun, and harvest the pods while they are still plump and green for edamame. Steam them, salt them lightly, and pop the beans straight out of the pod, or let them mature and dry for storage. Old farm families in some regions grew soy long before it became a health food headline, understanding it as simple, filling nourishment. One thing worth knowing is that soybeans need to be cooked, never eaten raw, since raw beans are hard on the stomach. Cooked properly, they are one of the most complete plant foods on the planet. A simple tip at harvest is to pull the whole plant and pick the pods off at once, since they tend to ripen close together and go quickly. If you want the most protein per square foot of garden, few crops beat this unassuming green bean sitting quietly on the vine. Plant 6. Fava beans, the old world giant your ancestors trusted through hard winters. Long before other beans reached European and American gardens, the fava bean was already feeding entire civilizations. These big, flat, meaty beans were a cold weather staple when little else would grow, and they carry an impressive load of protein and fiber in every serving. Your great-great-grandparents may well have known this bean by heart. It thrives in cool weather that would stop most legumes cold, which made it precious in early spring and late fall when the table was thin. Fava beans grow on sturdy, upright plants that rarely need staking, and they pull nitrogen into the soil just like their cousins, leaving your garden better for the next crop. You harvest the pods young and tender, or let them mature for dried beans you can store. Now here is one genuinely important safety note. A small number of people carry an inherited condition that makes fava beans dangerous for them specifically. It is uncommon, but real. So if fava beans are new to your family, it is worth a simple awareness before making them a regular food. For most people, they are a nourishing, ancient, deeply satisfying crop. A quick tip worth knowing is that older, tougher fava beans have a thick skin around each bean that many families slipped off before cooking to reach the tender inside. Grow them, and you are tending one of the oldest cultivated beans in human history. Plant 7. Peanuts, the underground surprise that isn't a nut at all. Here is a fact that catches almost everyone off guard. The peanut is not a nut. It is a legume, a bean, and it grows in the strangest way of anything in your garden. The flowers bloom above ground, then bend down and bury themselves in the soil, where the peanuts actually form underground. Children love watching it happen, and honestly, so do most adults. Peanuts are loaded with protein and good fats, which is why they became such an important food across the American South, where they grew easily in sandy soil and helped feed families and rebuild worn-out land. Growing them is a warm season adventure. You need a long, warm stretch and loose, sandy soil so the plants can push their pegs down into the earth. Come harvest, you lift the whole plant and find the pods clinging to the roots like buried treasure. Let them dry, then roast them for snacks, or grind them into fresh peanut butter the way old farmhouse kitchens did. One quick note, peanut allergies are serious for some folks, so keep that in mind if you share your harvest. But for a homestead crop that improves the soil and delivers rich protein straight from the ground, few plants are as fun or rewarding to grow yourself. Now, before we get to the second half, let me ask you something simple. If you are enjoying this list and learning a thing or two, take a moment to hit that like button and leave a comment telling Jack which plant surprised you the most. It genuinely helps the channel, and it helps other homesteaders find this old wisdom too. Now let us keep going, because the plants coming up are the ones most people have truly never considered. Plant 8. Sunflowers, the cheerful giant hiding a pantry full of protein. Everybody loves a sunflower for its beauty, but almost nobody grows one for its food, and that is a shame your grandparents would have shaken their heads at. Behind that golden face is a head packed with hundreds of seeds, and those seeds carry a solid dose of protein along with healthy fats and minerals. Native peoples across the Americas grew sunflowers as a serious food crop for thousands of years, long before they became a decorative afterthought. The plant is about as easy as growing gets. Drop seeds in the ground after the last frost, give them sun, and stand back. They practically raise themselves. As the flower fades and the back of the head turns brown, the seeds are ready. Cut the head, dry it, and rub the seeds free. You can roast them for snacking, press them for oil, or simply eat them by the handful. One practical tip: the birds and squirrels want that harvest as badly as you do, so cover the ripening heads with a light cloth or mesh if you want to keep them. A single tall sunflower can hand you a real bowl of protein-rich seeds, and the stalks and spent heads can go straight to the compost or the chickens afterward. Beauty and nourishment growing on the very same stalk, exactly the kind of double value old gardeners loved. Plant 9. Pumpkin seeds, the part almost everyone throws straight in the trash. Here is something that will make you wince a little. Every autumn, families across America scoop out the insides of their pumpkins and toss the seeds in the garbage. They are throwing away one of the most protein-rich snacks the garden ever produced. Those seeds, sometimes called pepitas, are dense little packages of protein, minerals, and healthy fat that people have valued for centuries. Your grandmother almost certainly saved and roasted them, because wasting food simply was not done. Growing pumpkins is a joy in itself. Sprawling vines and big cheerful fruit, but the seeds are the hidden reward. If you want the best snacking seeds, plant a hull-less oilseed variety, which gives you seeds with no tough shell to fight through. Otherwise, save the seeds from any pumpkin, rinse them, dry them, toss them with a little salt, and roast them until golden. The smell alone will bring the whole house into the kitchen. It is one of the simplest, most satisfying ways to turn a fall decoration into real food, and there is no waste in it either. On the old homestead, the flesh became pies and soups, the seeds became snacks, and the vines fed the animals. That was simply how careful families lived. So this year, before you carve that pumpkin, remember the treasure hiding inside. The part most people throw away is the part your ancestors valued most. Plant 10. Quinoa, the ancient mountain grain that carries a complete protein. High in the mountains of South America, people were growing quinoa thousands of years ago and calling it the mother of all grains. They were not exaggerating. Quinoa is one of the rare plant foods that delivers a complete protein, carrying every essential building block your body needs, which is exactly why it kept mountain communities strong at brutal altitudes where little else would grow. It is technically not a grain but a seed, which is part of why it is so nourishing. And here is the good news for the home gardener. Quinoa is tough. It handles poor soil, cool nights, and dry spells that would flatten other crops, standing tall in conditions that discourage almost everything else. The plants grow into striking, colorful stalks that look beautiful in a garden bed. Once the seed heads mature and dry, you harvest and rinse them well. That rinsing step matters, because the natural coating on raw quinoa is bitter and needs to be washed away before cooking. After that, it cooks up light and fluffy in minutes. For a crop that feeds you this completely and asks for so little in return, quinoa is a quiet marvel. The ancient mountain people knew exactly what they had. We are only now catching up to their wisdom. Plant 11. Amaranth, the forgotten grain that was once treasured like gold. Amaranth has one of the most dramatic histories of any plant on this list. Ancient peoples in the Americas prized it so highly that it was woven into their most sacred traditions, and it was cultivated by the millions. Then it nearly vanished for centuries. Today, it is quietly returning, and gardeners are rediscovering what those early growers already knew. Amaranth is a double gift. The plant gives you tiny protein-rich seeds, and its leaves can be eaten like a tender green, so you get two foods from one crop. Both parts carry good protein, which is rare and enormously practical. Growing it is almost effortless. Amaranth loves heat, shrugs off drought, and produces towering plumes of deep red or gold that make it one of the most beautiful plants in the whole garden. You can harvest the young leaves through summer and let the seed heads mature in fall. Rub the dried heads and the tiny seeds pour out by the thousands. Toast them until they pop like miniature popcorn, or simmer them into a hearty porridge the way ancient families did. A handy tip is to rub the dry seed heads over a bucket, then winnow away the chaff in a light breeze the way farmers always have. For a plant that was once treasured like gold and then nearly lost, amaranth offers a remarkable amount of nourishment from a single, striking, easygoing crop. Plant 12. Kale, the tough old green that carries more protein than any leaf should. We think of kale as a modern health trend, but this rugged green is an old-world survivor that fed peasant families through brutal winters for hundreds of years. It grew when nothing else would, standing green and strong in the frost, and that toughness made it a lifeline. What most people never realize is how much protein hides in those dark leaves. For a leafy green, kale carries a genuinely impressive amount, along with a wealth of minerals your body craves. Cold weather even makes it sweeter, so a light frost improves the flavor rather than harming it. That is a gift for the fall and winter garden. Kale is famously easy to grow and will keep producing for months if you harvest the outer leaves and let the center keep growing. A single row can feed you well past the first snow. Toss the young leaves raw into salads, simmer the tougher ones into soups and stews, or crisp them in the oven. One practical note is to strip the tough central rib out of older leaves before cooking, since it can stay stringy while the leaf itself softens beautifully. Here at the Homestead Gardener, we love a crop that laughs at cold weather and keeps giving when the rest of the garden is quit. Kale is exactly that kind of stubborn, generous, nourishing old friend. Plant 13. Spinach. The fast, cool weather green that punches above its weight. Spinach has a reputation for making you strong, and while the old cartoons exaggerated, the instinct behind them was right. For a leafy green, spinach delivers a solid dose of protein along with iron and a long list of minerals, all in a crop that grows fast enough to feed you within a month of planting. That speed is exactly why it earned a place in old kitchen gardens. When the pantry ran thin in early spring, spinach was one of the first fresh, nourishing foods to fill the gap. It loves cool weather and actually struggles in summer heat, bolting to seed the moment it gets too warm. So the trick your grandparents knew was to plant it early in spring and again in fall, catching the cool bookends of the growing season. Snip the outer leaves, and the plant keeps producing more. Eat it fresh and tender in salads, or wilt it quickly into soups, eggs, and stews, where it practically disappears while adding real nourishment. One tip worth remembering is not to overcook it, since a quick wilt preserves far more of what makes it valuable. It also freezes well once wilted, so a good spring crop can stretch its nourishment deep into the year. Fast, hearty, and quietly protein-rich, spinach is proof that some of the best garden food asks almost nothing of you in return. Plant 14. Broccoli. The everyday vegetable hiding an unexpected protein secret. Broccoli sits in nearly every grocery store, so ordinary that we forget to be impressed by it. But your garden broccoli holds a secret the store-bought version rarely shows off. For a green vegetable, it carries a genuinely respectable amount of protein, especially considering how much of it you can eat in a single sitting. Add its deep well of vitamins and minerals and you have a crop that quietly does far more than it gets credit for. Broccoli is a cool season plant, thriving in the mild stretches of spring and fall when heat won't push it to flower too fast. And here is a detail most people miss entirely. After you cut the main head, the plant keeps producing smaller side shoots for weeks. So a single planting keeps feeding you long after that first harvest. Those side shoots are just as tender and nourishing as the first cut. Old gardeners knew to keep harvesting rather than pulling the plant. One practical tip is to cut the central head before the little buds begin to open and turn yellow, since that is the peak of flavor and texture. Steamed lightly, tossed into stir-fries, or eaten raw, garden broccoli is far more than a side dish. It is an unassuming little protein source hiding in plain sight. Plant 15. Buckwheat, the fast-growing pseudograin that saved thin harvests. Despite its name, buckwheat is not wheat at all, and it contains no gluten. It is a completely different plant, and a remarkable one. For generations, farmers turned to buckwheat when they needed a quick, dependable crop, because it matures faster than almost anything, sometimes going from seed to harvest in a couple of months. That speed made it a rescue crop, planted late to save a season that had gone wrong. Buckwheat seeds carry a good load of protein, with a well-rounded balance of the building blocks your body needs. And the plant does double duty. Its white flowers bloom generously and feed the bees, making it beloved by beekeepers, while its roots and fast cover improve tired soil. Growing it is about as simple as scattering seed and waiting. It thrives in poor ground where fussier crops sulk. Harvest the little triangular seeds once they mature and have dried down on the plant. Then grind them into flour for hearty pancakes and porridge, the kind of stick-to-your-ribs food that carried farm families through cold mornings. Many gardeners even grow a patch purely to turn under as a green manure, enriching the ground before the next crop. For a plant that grows this fast, feeds the bees, heals the soil, and fills the pantry with protein-rich flour, buckwheat is one of the most quietly useful crops a homesteader can plant. Plant 16. Watercress, the peppery water green the old herbalists prized. Watercress is one of those plants modern people have almost completely forgotten, yet it was once so valued that it was gathered wild from clean streams and sold in bundles at market. This little peppery green carries a surprising amount of protein for its tiny size, along with a remarkable concentration of vitamins and minerals packed into every leaf. Ounce for ounce, few greens are as nutrient-dense. It has a bright, sharp, peppery bite that wakes up a sandwich or salad instantly. Now here is where care matters. Wild watercress traditionally grew in flowing water, and gathering it from unknown streams can be risky because of what may be in that water. So the smart, safe move for a homesteader is to grow your own in a clean container or a controlled wet bed where you know the water is pure. It loves constant moisture and cool conditions, and it grows fast once it takes hold. Snip what you need, and it keeps coming back for more. Add it fresh at the very end of cooking, or pile it raw onto sandwiches and into salads to keep that bright peppery punch alive. For a forgotten green that the old herbalists treasured and that packs this much nourishment into such a small leaf, watercress deserves a comeback in far more backyard gardens than it currently gets. Plant 17. Lupini beans. The bitter old bean that guarded families through winter. Here is one almost nobody in America thinks to grow, yet it was once so valued that families guarded their stores of it through the cold months. Lupini beans come from the lupine plant, cousin to the pretty flowers you may know, and they carry one of the highest protein loads of any bean you can grow, along with rich fiber. Around the Mediterranean, they have been a beloved snack and lean season food for thousands of years. But this bean comes with a catch that makes its history fascinating. Straight off the plant, lupini beans are intensely bitter and must be soaked and rinsed over several days before they are safe and pleasant to eat. That patient preparation was simply part of life for the families who relied on them. The plant itself is beautiful and hardy, producing tall spires of blossoms before the pods form. Once you have soaked and cured the beans properly, they become a firm, satisfying, protein-packed snack. This is genuinely important. Never eat lupini beans raw or unsoaked, because that bitterness signals compounds that need to be washed away first. Prepared the traditional way, they are a treasure. Grow this one, and you are keeping alive a food ritual that carried whole communities through winter after winter. Plant 18. Moringa. The fast-growing tree they once called the miracle plant. Now we reach one of the most remarkable plants on this entire list. A tree that has been valued for so long and so widely that people gave it names like the miracle tree. Moringa leaves carry an extraordinary amount of protein for a leaf, along with a deep well of vitamins and minerals, which is why communities in warm parts of the world have leaned on it for generations as a dependable, nourishing food. What makes it almost unbelievable is how fast it grows. In the right warm climate, moringa shoots up several feet in a single season, giving you a steady harvest of tender, protein-rich leaves. In cooler regions, gardeners grow it in large pots and bring it in before frost, since it does not tolerate cold. You strip the small leaves from the stems and add them fresh to soups and stews, or dry them and crush them into a green powder to stir into almost anything. The flavor is mild and green, easy to slip into everyday meals. A dry jar of moringa powder keeps for months, which made it a dependable green food in seasons when nothing fresh was growing. For a tree that grows this quickly and hands you this much nourishment from its leaves alone, moringa has earned every bit of its legendary reputation. It is old wisdom and practical value growing on the very same branch. Plant 19. Hemp seeds. The misunderstood seed that quietly feeds the body beautifully. Few plants are as misunderstood as this one, so let us be clear right away. The hemp grown for food seeds is a completely different thing from anything intoxicating, and its little seeds are one of the most beautifully balanced foods in the plant kingdom. They carry a generous amount of protein in a form your body handles easily, along with the kind of healthy fats that are genuinely hard to get from plants. For a small seed, that is a remarkable combination, and people have quietly valued hemp seed as food for a very long time. Now here is the practical reality for the home gardener. Growing hemp is tightly regulated in many places, so before you plant a single seed, you must check the rules where you live, because they vary widely and matter. That said, the seeds themselves are widely available to eat and are wonderfully versatile. They have a soft, nutty flavor and need no cooking at all. Sprinkle them over oatmeal, blend them into smoothies, or stir them into yogurt for an easy protein boost. It is a shame this humble food seed spent so long tangled up in confusion, because on its own merits, hemp seed is one of the most nourishing and gentle plant proteins you will ever come across. Plant 20. Alfalfa, the old fodder crop whose sprouts feed people too. We finish with a plant most Americans only know as something fed to livestock, and that is exactly why it belongs at the end of this list. Alfalfa has been called the father of all foods, grown for thousands of years because of how deeply it nourishes. While the mature plant has long fed animals, it is the young sprouts that quietly feed people, delivering protein and a striking range of vitamins and minerals in a tiny, tender package. Here is the part homesteaders love most. You do not even need a garden bed to grow alfalfa sprouts. A simple jar on your kitchen counter is enough. Soak a spoonful of seeds, rinse them a couple of times a day, and within about a week you have a fresh, crisp handful of living protein. No soil and no sunshine required. It is one of the most reliable fresh foods you can grow in the dead of winter when the garden outside is frozen solid. One sensible tip is to keep your sprouting jar clean and rinse faithfully. Since fresh sprouts need that care to stay wholesome, pile them onto sandwiches and into salads for a fresh, green, satisfying crunch. From humble animal fodder to a jar of living food sitting right on your counter, alfalfa is the perfect note to end on. So there you have it. 20 protein-rich plants most people never think to grow, from the humble pea to the miracle leaves of the moringa tree. What ties them together is a simple truth our ancestors understood in their bones. Real nourishment does not have to come in a tub with a label. It can come from the ground, from seeds you plant. Old wisdom, it turns out, is quietly useful again. If this list gave you something worth planting, subscribe to the Homestead Gardener. Give this a like, and go watch another video now. Until next time, keep growing.